And one of the things I want to try and sort of deal with now is to start thinking about what that means in terms of, understanding what a brand means to a game developer, what a brand means to an indie, and how we actually take our game experience and move that forward. People, if you're having chats, if I could get you to that side so we can carry on with the session, that'd be great. But feel free to stay with us, and what we'll do is we'll introduce these lovely people. Alex, hello. Do you want to say who you are and what you do?
Oh. Is that on?
Yeah, I think
you hear me? Excellent. My name is Alex Moyet, and I'm currently the marketing director at indie publisher Digitial, working on some really awesome PC and console games. Before that, I worked at Media Molecule at Sony, Xbox's advertising agency, so lots of interesting experience across AAA and indie in the brand space.
Nat.
Hi, yeah, I'm Natalie Griffith. I run my own brand and marketing consultancy called Identity Spark. I've been in the industry 27 years this year. So I've kind of seen everything. Started life as a graphic designer and then a journalist, but I've spent 17, 18 years in marketing, communications and branding. So yeah, working with a whole range of different sizes of studios and things.
So marketing's just buying ads, isn't it?
No.
So I should point out I am actually a trained marketing guy. I actually have got my diploma in marketing. I am a
yeah. I feel like in marketing we're the only group of people in games that have to sit here and defend what we do every single conference that we come to.
Marketing people are the only people, in no other industry do marketing people have to justify themselves. It's ridiculous.
We're not evil. No, I mean, are you?
Only a little bit evil.
Okay, well, he's evil. We're great.
Evil.
No, obviously marketing is, it seems really ugly and corporate word, but essentially it is just about, getting the game that you have worked so hard on out there to more people and getting more love for it, more sales for it. And, we absolutely care about that success just as much as the developers working on the games do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of where some of this sort of marketing is evil thing has come from, I think people that were sort of in old school console development in the 90s, I think there was a lot of, especially if you were working kind of a big corporate US publisher, there was a lot of this kind of like, oh no, now you need to make it green because the marketing focus group have said so. And I think there was always quite a bit of tension. But I think, anybody that doesn't integrate a marketing function and a branding function right at the beginning of development now is not setting themselves up for success at all. So I think as we now become part of the pot, there's a little bit less resistance than there used to be.
But there definitely was that method where, in a console space in particular, when I was at Sony, we were a PlayStation Home, but we still had the thing of we throw our game over to the marketing people who have had no engagement at all. And if it fails, it's their fault. Doesn't matter whether the game was any good. Yeah. It's their fault because it was a marketing guy. Therefore, they're evil. So I think there's a lot of this kind of historical blame culture stuff. But I think increasingly, it's also a case that we've had this kind of protected zone, which again doesn't exist in other industries, where the people making a product have nothing to do with the audience historically. Now, obviously, with free to play and mobile, that's changed. But I think that's really the heart of where the disjointing has been historically. With that in mind, do you think people understand what a brand is?
I think a lot of people think of branding as, what's my logo going to look like? They think of the visual side of branding. They don't think of it in terms of what does your business or your game stand for? What is it that you care about? What do you want to achieve? Where do you want to position yourself against everything else? They don't think about, tone of voice, how to get themselves across on different channels, all that kind of thing. They just think, oh yeah, if we've got a logo designed, we've sorted the branding.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Obviously, it is the most immediate element of marketing because it is so visual. It's what you're looking at on the storefront when you're selling your games. It's often the most contentious point, I would say, of any marketing discussion is talking about the visuals of what you're communicating. But equally, I think a lot of people don't necessarily remember those aspects when they're thinking about brands. 5, 10 years in the future, they're thinking about tone of voice, about the conversations they were having about, the type of games a publisher was releasing as opposed to specific elements of that branding. So, yeah, marketing is much more than just what you're seeing on a store page. And
even when we see those visual things, so like the curved tick, that's Nike, Just Do It. You've got all of these things about exercise, about, what you'd expect the quality of the product to be. You've got all of these things that are imbued in that simple curved shape. And I think the disconnect is that people don't necessarily always understand the level of work that goes into building those emotional connections. So when you look at something like, Sonic, we know everything about Sonic the Hedgehog, don't we? I mean, anyone who doesn't know about Sonic the Hedgehog in the room, leave. No, not really. But you know what I mean? We already emotionally know. But to get to that stage, there's a huge amount of work that's gone into that. Millions of dollars have gone into that. So what on earth has this got to do with indies? Because they don't have millions of dollars and lifetimes of...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to set expectations. And I mean, talking about Nike, there are very few bigger brands in the entire universe. But there is a big difference between a brand and a brand with a capital B. And I think to put this into context, go have a chat with someone, one of your friends, one of your family members that doesn't play games, and talk to them about the games that really mean a lot to you in the indie space. And, 99% of the times they won't have heard of it. And to put that into context, I was talking to a friend the other day who doesn't play games. I mean, they will have heard of FIFA or Assassin's Creed or the big AAAs, but they don't play games. And they said to me, oh, have you seen that Cupman, that Disney Cupman? And they were talking about Cuphead. And, that's a brand, there's a huge brand, got a huge amount of support from Xbox, over 2 million sales, I think it is. Probably one of the biggest indie success stories of the last few years. And even then, someone can't necessarily get the name right that's not in games. So I think, lowering expectations, you're not necessarily going to create a Sonic overnight. That is not an overnight job. That is a 20, 30-year job. But that doesn't mean that creating your own personal brand or your games brand or your studio brand, your developer brand isn't hugely important for that long-term vision.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of expectation management of the fact that this, like you say, this isn't an overnight thing. You have to put some time into it, and you have to, regardless of how it is you're trying to reach out to your consumers, you've only got to go back to sort of classic sales marketing funnel, and kind of, everybody has to have encountered a brand or a product 6-7 times before they kind of make a decision to purchase it. Well, it's going to be exactly the same in games. You don't instantly feel loyalty for something. It's extremely rare. So you have to put that time and effort in and gradually bring people to you in a variety of different ways.
And I like the way something you said earlier with this idea that it's about an attitude as much as anything else. And I think if you look at kind of indie game brands in particular that we know, so they're often tied up with the personality of the individuals. So I mean, the two obvious ones are people like Mike Bithell or Rami, and their personal attitude is the brand of their game companies.
But even that didn't come overnight. So I knew Mike Bithell when he was a wet behind the ear game designer that came to work at Blitz, and he was the first person I knew really who was actively engaging on Twitter and doing stuff. And he wouldn't have pinned that at that point as him building his personal brand. But that's exactly what he was doing. It's like you said in the last session about overnight success taking years. But Mike was like that. And so even if you're not consciously aware of that's what you're doing, that is what he was doing.
But
he was building
really
his personal brand and his passion and
it's consistency.
Yes,
and I think
exactly.
this is the real crux.
And I think you only get that consistency if you're actually genuine with it as well, and kind of authentic with what you're doing. I think if you try to fabricate what you think is the perfect brand, that's never going to work because you can't sustain it.
And I think it's, in fact, I did some work as a branding person a long time before I joined games for an actuary company, would you believe? I was seriously, you could kill me now. But
You're wearing the hat.
It was seriously me. I wasn't wearing the hat at the time. I had a different hat then. But it's really fascinating, kind of just trying to understand how do you make a corporation who have an identity that's not necessarily the most exciting and turn that into a brand. I mean, again, it's about understanding core values.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think getting to the heart of what it is that could become your brand. What is it that you believe in your core? What is it that you want to try and achieve? What do you want to be seen as achieving? What kind of reputation do you want to have? This doesn't have to be a hugely kind of egotistical driven thing, but you have to be thinking about that because without that, you've got no direction for marketing, you've got no direction for PR, you've got no direction for your social media or your website. And if you're trying to pull all those things together without that foundation, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
But I suppose this is a kind of area I want to kind of explore a bit further because I think the issue I have is essentially a classic marketing training exercise. If you've ever done a marketing course or degree type stuff, this is something that's rammed into us. The difference between direct response and brand building. Direct response is about getting your audience in now. Brand building is about sustaining them so you can continue to get them to come in for themselves. And historically, in mobile games, I say historically because it's only been 8 or 10 years, whatever, but the point is that we're focused so heavily on direct response because we have this amazing route to market through ads and inside games and all this kind of stuff. Do you think we may have basically just ignored the brand value side of things? What do you think?
I don't think necessarily. I think it is possible to have a continuous marketing funnel, continuous acquisition funnel without necessarily denigrating your own brand. At the same time, I think the landscape is very much transitioned to this games as a service, early access, transparent development model that we're all in now, where it is no longer just enough to, pre-prepare assets or announcements 2 years in advance, put them out there, sell some games, move on. You have to be constantly engaging, constantly talking, and that has to evolve with you as a person or as a studio or as a developer. And as Nat said as well, just be really genuine and authentic, otherwise it will come crumbling down.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the games as a service thing is what's kind of changing a lot of it. Quickly back on the mobile side, though, I think you still get brands building themselves up over the limited time that we've had. So, there's most parents would be quite happy to, will now buy a Tokaboka game when it comes out because it's a Tokaboka game, and I think a couple of years ago that didn't seem even vaguely possible that people had any idea who made the games. But yeah, coming back to the early access thing, I think with games as a service, it's now absolutely critical that you think long term. Like you say, it's not just shove it in a box and put it out and move on. You've got to build people. You've got to build people to come to you over time. If you're even doing an early access game, you've got to attract a certain type of person that wants to come and play an early game and gets a kick out of playing something that's not quite finished and giving you feedback. Then when that gets more finished, those people will move on to something else that's early because that's what they enjoy, and you need to get another wave of people in. So even that long-term games as a service thing, you're still targeting different types of people during the lifetime of your product because they're going to be interested in different types of things and they have different motivations. So you've got to be on it all the time.
And it's not a linear process anymore, I think, in a way that it used to be, where you have your announcement, your release, your launch, your blah, 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 maybe have some DLC. But it is, yeah, exactly. It's not linear. It's not a line. It's actually a series of circles, or it's like a Venn diagram mess. But absolutely, it's a massive spiraling mess. But that's why you need marketing people.
But also, although it is although it is that. There are some structures around which we can kind of at least build. There are some suppositions that we can build. So, even simple things like how many people are spending time thinking about who their primary audience is, or their secondary audience, or their tertiary audience. How many people are then turning those into understanding what the channels are that you can communicate to them, and then how you find the right messages.
Yeah, I think that channels versus users thing is really important. I think a lot of people are still in the mindset of kind of, we need some social media. It's like, well, let's get some pictures on Instagram and we'll do some tweets and we'll take a Facebook page up. But one thing I've been working on a lot the last 2 or 3 years is actually, for each project I'm working on, mapping the channels over that sales funnel, actually, and kind of thinking, well, okay, in the early stages for, Game X, actually, we're only going to attract those earlier people that are kind of new to the funnel at the top of Facebook, and maybe when we get a little bit further down, then they get interested in Instagram for these reasons, and kind of as they sort of go through the funnel, you have to migrate them across channels often as well. You can't just kind of go, we'll have a Facebook page and that'll do it all, because it's just going to reach different people at different times.
And I think part of that, though, is also understanding core messaging, because if you're going to put things up on social media and it doesn't resonate with that audience, and it doesn't actually fit with your brand, you've just sent mixed messages. You've just undermined X number of months of work in the process.
You have, I think, but it would probably take quite a significant tweet or a significant Facebook message to undermine it completely. Yeah, if you're doing something illegal, offensive, for example, that is very bad.
We know some people who've done that.
Just a few. But I think within reason, you can experiment quite a lot, particularly with social media, particularly if you're doing kind of open, transparent game development, you're putting out screenshots or, even things that have gone wrong in the process, seeing if that sticks, if people are interested in that, jumping on hashtags and things like that.
And I think that's where kind of looking at the data is absolutely crucial. And if you're running multiple channels, if you're not actually looking at the analytics of those at least weekly, then that experimentation can easily turn from experimentation into actually screwing it up, because you've got to actually keep on top of what's working and what isn't, capitalize on the things that are, and with things like Facebook, the rules change every 10 minutes anyway on what's going to work and what isn't, and how they're changing the newsfeed algorithm and everything else. So you've not just got to keep on top of what you're doing, you've got to see what the competitors are doing, you've got to keep on top of actually what the platform holders are doing to change their offering for their users, because all of that plays into how effective your content's going to be.
So if you had to give one bit of advice for indies thinking about games, that's the classic question, I have to ask it. What's the thing to focus on if you're going to look at your game? Should they even try to bother looking at their game as a brand? Should they look at themselves as a brand? Should they look at the company as a brand? What do you think?
I think the game is a brand, the person is a brand, and the studio is a brand, whether you like it or not. That just is. As defaults, we are all brands. Our games are all brands, and that may seem terribly cynical and horrendous, and we don't want to be brands, but it is, and that's how consumers are seeing it, subconsciously as well as consciously. So yeah, it's not really a choice. Your game is going to be a brand. It is going to be viewed and perceived and analysed, and it's up to you to make sure that analysis is correct and beneficial.
And also, I think now that the barriers to actually getting things up there and developed and live are so low, you can have, the consumer doesn't care if the thing they're buying on Steam is made by one guy in a bedroom in the weekend or by a studio of 60 people over 2 years. They're still paying for it to some degree or other, or they're being asked to engage with it. So if you don't actually take what you're putting out there seriously and actually sort of take the consumers seriously and respect their standpoint, regardless of whether you think it's important or not, then actually that's kind of it's disrespecting the players. So they're not gonna become loyal to you.
Yeah, they're not going to forgive you if you do. If they do. Just the way it is. Because let's face it, they've got so much else out there they could do. And if there's any point in us thinking about brands, it's about being able to make it more likely the next time they see something I do to go act on it. And that sense of trust. I mean, if you think about it, where branding comes from is I brand this sheep or whatever so that I know it's mine and other people know it's mine. And then when I put it onto a product I sell, you know that it's something I put my name to, that you can trust. And I think at the end of the day, if branding is anything, it's about building trust. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, ultimately, you're trying to get brand loyalty, aren't you? I mean, that's what it's about, for people to be able to talk about you to other people, the kind of word of mouth stuff to kick in, but then, like you say, for people to come back to you with the next thing you do. And I think that's one of Mike's great successes, that his personal brand led everything, is that it was such a journey through the creation of Thomas Was Alone and the stuff he's done since, that by the time that actually came out for people to buy, so many people were vested in wanting to see him successful, that it was like, yes, absolutely, we'll get that now. We've kind of been with you on the journey, and I think that kind of thing is really powerful. So I think people that sort of think we'll kick all this stuff off 2 weeks before launch are missing a trick, because you miss that opportunity to really kind of get people involved in your journey and your story.
And crucially as well, the bar is so high, especially in indie, that you cannot do those things, but a lot of your competition will be doing those things and doing them better. So it's absolutely worthwhile investing in.
And on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you.